Do you mean Team 17? Or?
Of course, you're from Team 17. What is Team 17?
It was a group of people who've become firm friends who love the Amiga and really want to produce the best, or as good as we could do. I guess it was everybody's dream, really, to start a publishing company and work on games like Alien Breed, Super Frog, things like that. So it was an amazing time. We weren't 17 people and we weren't 17 years old. So as for where the name came from, it was put together from a couple of companies that went before 17-bit and Team 7 in Sweden.
Yeah, Team 17 was formed only when myself and another programmer called Fido-Net tried to do something like it was Miami Chase, that first software film, I believe. And then Martyn introduced us to Rico Holmes, and that's basically how that started us working together. And from there it evolved that we got the finished product and we could make a game, I guess, and we love doing it. So that's an idea to start Team 17, I guess. What about that?
And what exactly did you do at Team 17? You had your own parts in the whole development team, or do you have your... Was it like everybody could do everything, or
no, there was specialized programmers like Andreas who chiefly did programming. I think everybody contributed to design. There's Rico, who's not here, was a really good artist and a really good musician called Alistair Brimble, who we worked with as well. I kind of did little bits to bring the team together and work with the team and produce the game. It was a really effective team. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very. I think it's quite similar to how small indie teams start today when they're making a game. There was only a few people involved, and everybody was quite niched. And I think that everybody had a really good say in how the game evolved as well, how the game should look and play and feel.
At what time you got the idea to do Worms?
What was that?
Worms. At what time you got the idea to do this game?
Worms was brought to Team 17 by an individual who had been working on it for about 30 years, it seemed. It was a bit crazy, and we decided to publish the game and work on the game with him, and numerous sequels for 10, 15 years really. It was enormously successful.
You talk about 17 guys doing games. Was there already a hierarchical system at the beginning, so that someone said, oh, that's money, that's him, and oh, that's a technical problem, give it to them?
Yeah, I mean, people who had skills in programming would be the only people who make those calls. And everybody had their own role in the team, and everyone contributed to the project. So, you know, like no one was going to mess around with the music. It was all Alistair. You know, and it's the same with code and art, really. So it was very defined roles.
I mean, an example for how we collaborated was, of course, like what can the hardware do and what can we do? And that comes into play when you're designing the game, both from the artist side and the programmer side. So everybody really had a lot of say, and I think Martyn especially had a really good thing about the feeling for the game, the atmosphere. So I think it was collaboration and all.
Andreas, your first game was Miami Chase, I read. Can you tell something about it? I don't remember it.
Well, it's not. That was the one and only game I was part of doing before Team 17. otherwise was full contact and start with Team 17. But it was a 360 squad with a car running top down, and that was really about it. And Codemasters decided they wanted to buy it and sell it, and they did. So I guess that what came out of that was that a lot of the technology could be reused, and we learned a lot on what we needed to make a game. So that's how it started next game.
There were a lot of famous games you did with Team 17. Perhaps we can announce some games, and you have some nice anecdotes or comments to the games. And I will start with, for example, Stunt GP. Your memories to this game.
That was a very small team with just two of us, really. We just tried to do something a little bit different. It was supposed to be more stunts than racing, but it worked out the other way around. And you know, I think it was about 1997. I think we did that game, and it had a very advanced 3D system for its time, really. It was a lot of fun. And again, everything was really, if it wasn't fun, you know, we just didn't do it.
Another game, Robin? Another game?
Let's try. You have some nice T-shirts on. Of course, for the Amiga users and the fans here, you probably, this is the first title they've seen from you, in my opinion. So Alien Breed was a big hit also in the shops. We had a rental store in these days, and Alien Breed was one of the main hitters in this year.
Yeah, the special edition we did of Alien Breed and released at budget price was #1 in the charts for 52 weeks.
Before budget.
In the UK, yeah. Before budget, yeah. So, yeah, it was, I think it still holds that record in the UK, so something quite proud of.
And I don't remember it correctly, but it must have a good copy protection, otherwise it won't be in the charts so long.
I think one of the ways we got round piracy was terrible on Amiga, really, but for some reason, when we did the titles cheaper than normal price at £10, they would sell like crazy. So we started doing more at low cost because it was the only way to gain an advantage on Amigas.
Was it one thing on Team 17 which was the main thing for it, that Team 17 got so big that you also never tried to sell for the full price? In some games you just pick the low price. Just in Germany it was $49.99 for a full price game, or even $19.99 for the small box games you like Quackshot and something like this. Was it a part of the success?
I think so. It was. We talked with the people doing the distribution, and we tried new things, really to gain an advantage and a sales advantage and get the games to people's hands.
Then there was Super Frog. Your memories to this nice little game? Super Frog. Your memories to that nice little game?
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. What was it?
Your memories to the game Super Frog. It was from Team 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it nice to quote it, produce it, who did it?
Was it a nice game for us? So, your story about Super Frog.
Oh, my story was. I guess. I mean, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's horrible. I know.
I guess one can see on the games at least we made was that they come or are combinations of different genres, and Super Frog is certainly something between Super Mario and what's the other one, Petrol, Sonic. So I mean, it comes from inspiration. I wonder if you can do this on Amiga, and we tried to do it, and it just turned out that yes, you can. to a certain extent anyway, and that's how we wanted to do a game like that. Like we wanted with Project X, we wanted to do a scrolling shooter, and we wanted to do a sort of a gauntlet with alien. So I mean, it all stems from other games that we think were great and that we loved ourselves, and trying to do something better or something Amiga.
But I was wondering, some years ago I found a version for PC. Did you did the version, or was it another company who did the PC conversion?
For PC conversion?
Yeah, but the conversions were handled out of house. Another team did them because the PC market at that time was tiny, and it wasn't something we were really interested in ourselves.
But at that time, PC action games were very rare. Also, there are not so much action games, and we were totally astonished about a game like this on a PC, which of course was an Amiga, a normal
and
game.
It was playable, it was okay. The PC conversion was a good conversion.
Yeah. Oh, the conversion is quite good. You know, we had a quality level that we wanted to hit. But like you said, I don't even think you could get proper joysticks for PC. So it just didn't seem a good idea to do PC games. I mean, there was demand for them. People liked Alien Breed's conversion, for example, but you know, trying to play it on analog joysticks and things like that, it kind of, to me, it sucked. But it's interesting to see that the PC as a format really grew. It took some time, but it got there at the end.
What were the games you loved most? You were involved in the games you made. You loved most?
I still think Alien Breed, the first game, is because it was the first, and everything came together with the team, and we could realise as dreams really what we wanted to do. We didn't really believe that we were going to become a big software company or anything like that. And so we just put our passion and energy into the game, made it everything we wanted it to be, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, my first game was a full contact, but it was definitely, for me, was Alien Breed that just really kicked things off, because you went in and wanted to do this with full confidence, you had a really good idea what you wanted to do. On my personal side, obviously you had the technology, you wanted to get started, I was just ready to go. So it was really, it was possibly the most fun project I think I've ever done. So it was really, really good time doing it. And also I didn't have to do pretty much anything for the special edition, so it's so...
And how difficult it was for you with the small and nice ideas and characters like a super frog, which is why you choose a frog instead of anything else. It's okay, but then it turns out to become a reality that you have to think of three-dimensional. How does you and your friends affect 3D, the change in minds of making a game, which looked flat and nice, and the Amiga could easily work with it in 2D?
Yeah, I think technology drove the game content more than anything. There was a demand certainly when the PC started, 3D FX cards, everybody got excited about it. The PlayStation came along, and the world went 3D crazy, which, you know, the industry and the consumers were less inclined to buy it and play 2D games. And it was really nice to see it come full circle and see the indie developers you know, making 2D games again, and really, no matter what the technology is, that it's a genre and a style in itself now.
Yeah, I can only add to that. I mean, took me a while before I really got a grip around, for example, in maths. I never learned algebra, really not to school. So I mean, that for a start, it took a while. But we also did projects that, unreleased projects, couldn't really go into this here, but we did play around a lot with 3D on Team 17 for a while. Ironically, I ended up myself doing X2 on PlayStation, which is a 2D scroller. As it happens, I mean, PlayStation, as those who program it knows, is terrible at 2D. So it would have been easier to just make a 3D game. There you go.
Easier, okay.
Were there a lot of unfinished, unpublished games in your career at Team 17? Games that never saw the light?
There was one, 2 or 3, yeah. I mean, it's sometimes whatever you planned doesn't work out. You know, the game isn't going great, so you know, we just decided not to publish it because it costs a lot of money to publish it and do all that, and the team can be working on the next game.
Any more? You remember any more games or any more products that were not published?
Within Team 17? Do you mean after I worked at Team 17 or?
Team 17 has a long period of work.
No, the games I worked on, the last game I worked on Team 17 was X2 on PlayStation. Then I ended up doing some engine coding, and then I moved back to Sweden.
You said PlayStation. How hard was it to switch from Amiga to PlayStation or other consoles?
It's not as hard as one would believe, because having started, but starting to understand programming with Amiga was really cool in the way that you have your custom chips, you have parallelism and all that. So to switch to something like PlayStation that obviously also had that, to use these customized chips wasn't that difficult. I think what was difficult in the beginning was more the immature tools that we used to develop. But otherwise, no, I don't think that switch was too hard.
Would anybody of you be able or willing to do an Amiga game again, if possible? If you want, if it's possible that you will create an Amiga game again in the future. A lot of new games are out for old computers.
Do you see it? What Patrick is asking, do you see a chance for a reunited team for an Amiga game?
Well, I think we were only talking about that earlier. We very fondly remember the time in the early 90s doing Amiga games, and the whole programming community was great. And I think it would be great to have a small team working with something like Amiga again, and not a big, huge, complex 3D game. It would be that have 20, 30, 40 bloody thousand people working on it. You know, it was better when it was you all knew what you were doing and you all contributed.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the time between 90s and zeros, I mean, that was just magic, and I don't think in that context you can get it back. The market was completely different. The whole computer world looked completely different with games and everything. And I really, really enjoyed that. And today it's just really, really different. But if you do anything, you do it on a hobby basis, and if it turns out to something, it does. But we also have different lives today, and it's difficult to just sit and say that you might or might not do anything. You never know.
From my point of view, may I say that the heart of Team 17 is 2D? Is that correct? Would you say that is a?
I think it was just born by the technology of the Amiga, and it suited the games. And at the time in the arcades in the early 90s, everything was 2D. So that was most of our inspiration, really, and the sort of look and feel that we wanted our games to have. And we also had obviously limited resources in we have one artist, one coder, one programmer type thing. So there was only so much we could do, but we made sure that we did everything we could on the Amiga. We used every ounce of it.
What are you doing now? I read that Martyn left the studio in 2011. What are you both doing now?
I started a consultancy working with other developers. I worked with Double 11 and a couple of other companies in the UK, and I started a small publishing company that worked on football games. So we did New Star Soccer, which is really popular, and Simon, who's the sole programmer of that, did an American football game, which was top of the iPhone charts in the US for ages, and people in the US can't believe it was American football written by an Englishman.
Blasphemic. But stands for your technique and for engineering and for, yeah.
What have you done? What have you done?
Well, after Team 17, I ran my own company that was, ironically enough, doing quite a bit of stuff for Team 17. Because I decided to move back to Sweden in the early 2000s. And then I ended up in Stockholm in Avalanche Studios, and I was quite heavily involved in Just Cause 2 series, which is a 3D action. And that was really good fun to do. And that was I'd say my first real encounter with 3D in a project. I had been doing it before as well, but this was a full-blown ongoing project, and that taught me a lot. So I stayed there for about 7 years, and then I moved on to King for a couple of years, because I found it at that time. This was when mobiles were getting really popular, and I didn't know anything about mobiles really, or the markets, and I was keen to learn a bit about that. So, and then 4 years ago, I started at Unity, because my love was falling back into doing down to low-level coding, and I love doing that there. So that's what I'm doing now.
Did you collect all your games? Do you both have a collection of the things you were involved? The games you were involved, did you collect them? Do you have them at home? Have you all your games you did in a shelf, for example, or did you play them?
Unfortunately not. I mean, in Team 17 terms, I think there was 50, 60 games over quite a long period, and I foolishly didn't start a library of our games, because when the game was finished, usually we just moved on to the next one. But through emulation, I'm happy to still play the game, so I'm like that. And I don't have any shelves big enough for all the games.
No, I really play. I mean, I've been on emulators, unfortunately, on Amiga right now. Been playing a bit of Alien Breed, but also other titles. You tend to go back to some stuff to see how it was, and was it really like you remembered it. It's really good fun when actually, yeah, it is. But otherwise nowadays I got 2 young daughters now, so I play Super Mario on Nintendo Switch, the 2D version, because that's what everybody prefers apparently.
From a modern point of view, what do you see what is the difference between the 90s and the 22s or 2020s in games industry and in customers or in players?
I think the attention span is really short. So you have to make things spectacular and look absolutely great from the off. It's got to be usually motion picture quality, things like that. I mean, we never dream of if you looked at, say, console games today, we did never start, known where to start, if there were only 3 or 4 of us making the game. So we were very lucky that we were at the age and had the skills, and the Amiga was there, and it made for a level playing field. It means we, as a small team, we could be as good as anybody. So we're very thankful for that. I mean, I get really agitated when DVD came along and there was monstrous, non-interactive, you know, sort of, I don't know, it changed. And it became more about the visuals rather than the game itself. So I think gaming was a lot more pure in the early 90s, but which I collect arcade machines from the late 80s and early 90s. So I'm very much tied to that age tag.
Did you ever thought about sitting in front of a lot of fans 40 or 30 years later and talking about your products?
Not really. Not really.
How is it for you to talk about things that are 20, 30 years ago and people are listening and they remember the things from the last decade, from the last century?
Perhaps knowing the past better than you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we ever thought about anything other than the game and the team itself. When we were making the games, it was just very small, tight team, and we didn't really consider feedback. I mean, we used to get reviews from magazines, and it was amazing at the time, you know. That we thought we'd sort of hit it when we were appearing in magazines and on front covers and things, and we attended a show in early 90s, me and Andreas, and we ended up getting very drunk, and a lot of people kept coming up and talking to us, which I think that was the first time we'd sort of witnessed fans of our games see us in real life. So I mean, this was all before the internet, you know. It's hard to imagine there was a world without internet, but you know, and we, despite there being no internet, we, as a team, we were very disparate. I mean, Andreas and Rico were in Sweden, and we were near Leeds in the UK, and the musician was 500 miles away, hanging out with sheep in Cornwall. So.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know what to add to that, because that's exactly what you said, basically.
Perhaps there are some questions from the audience. Now we will give you the chance to ask questions. Anybody wants to come here?
Yeah. Hello, Martyn. Hello. Ich werde noch der zweite Vorname bekommen. Hello, Andreas. Hello, Martyn. I have a question about the Amiga time. At the time when you produce Amiga games for Team 17, what was the most expensive project, you think? Was it Super Fork or Project X? What was the most expensive?
I don't know. We, rightly or wrongly, never considered any kind of budget. It was just, we started the game, knew what we wanted to do, and it was finished when it was finished. That's it. There was no budget. Whereas in modern times, it's very different. It's a very financial approach, and everything has got to be accounted. That I don't think there's any conversations about what X cost and Y cost. It was just about making it as good as it can be.
Did you have sleepless nights with time limits or something?
There was occasionally, there was a good time obviously to finish things, because I think when you're working on a game as well, there's a natural time to build a game or build a project, and if it's not done by a certain time, the momentum can go really. So.
Do you think that the worms nowadays on PS4 or PS5 is the only game who catch the character of the Team 17 game, the only which still resist, or?
I think. I mean, I can't talk for what Team 17 are doing now. It's I've been gone 12, 13 years, but they have a very different publishing agenda, where they pick up indie games and they've been very successful with that. They don't really have an identity of the games anymore. I mean, particularly there was that identity in the early 90s, because there was only really the team, the 4 or 5 guys doing the games at that time.
Are you proud if you see that your games, like Worms, if your Worms is playing up to today, from the young generation on PS5 or PS4?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think if a game's good, anybody can enjoy it really. It's only like a piece of music, you know. If it's good entertainment, it shouldn't matter what age group.
It's still so simple, but it's a perfect party game.
Yeah.